I've been playing with some video transmitters here today, wiring them up, testing them. I want to put one on the Rover. I'm going to attempt to be able to sit here in the basement and view a camera on the Rover while it's outside the house, see how far away I can get, etc. So, got a smattering of 5.8 video transmitters, 3 of them there, a 1.2, 1.2, and a 1.2. Having a little trouble with them, so I broke out the power meter, and if I stop a second and power up this 1.2, 1.3, whatever you call them, there's many channels in a band like that. And these only work on 2 channels in the United States. So I powered up this little transmitter. It'll go to channel 8 or channel 9. That is it. Like I say, we only get 2 channels in the United States. Let's see what we got here. Got 627 milliwatts, 27.98 dB out on channel 8, channel 9, 28.1 dB at 645 milliwatts. So let's see, go back to channel 8, 27.99, 629. Channel 9, 28.10, 6. So there's very little power difference in these 2 channels, although this does show that channel 9 is the best of the 2 channels. So I do know this transmitter is outputting. Don't know if it's working completely. I had trouble yesterday getting it to work. So we'll continue here. Got a little bit of screwed up wiring here. Got the white I don't use. This is audio. And then you got power, ground, and the yellow is video. So the yellow and one of the grounds, which I broke this ground last night. I've got to put it back with these ground wires. Goes over to the camera, and then the red and black go over to power. And you can just power this with a LiPo battery, whatever. So I've got to solder this ground back to the where the 3 grounds are together to go to a camera. That's all there is to it. This had been on the flame wheel, not even been on the flame wheel in several of the crashes. I'm not sure. And so I've got so many. This was just a little power lead that I soldered on yesterday. Not much to them. I just sorted it on to the end of where it was. But looking back on it last night, here's where the wire was extended a couple of inches at one point. Back here's the original wiring, and I can see on the camera part it was extended here. You can tell the difference in color of the shrink tubing. Probably seeing the shrink tubing stuff is off color is I didn't have enough black at that time, and got one piece put in here, then at some point had another couple of inches added on. Like I say, this should go to the ground right here. So the ground for the battery, the ground for the camera, and the ground for the video transmitter are all the same ground to make it work. So I'll have to, these two are exactly the same. 1.2, 1.3 video transmitters. Totally the same. Just, I took this one. There's some of that killer double-sided tape from 3M, by the way. I took this one out of the can. It comes in, and there's also a heat sink in there. Let me get that part. I'll show you that real quick. So you can see this 1.2, 1.3 video transmitters, like I say, still in the can. I took, whoops, where'd it go? There it is. I took this one out for weight on a model. And this is the can it comes in. You can see they're virtually the same. And here's the plate for the top where the antenna comes out. Oops. Here's the plate for the bottom. And all the screws that hold it together. And inside of it was also these metal plates. And what these are is for heat sink. And to make them spring loaded, sorta, the corners, two corners are bent up. And that sorta spring loads the plates against the, I'm trying to get them together here again. Let them slide around. So they're inside the can, in here, and then this part is also put in there, and it's kind of like a big heat sink. That's very useful on a quad or a Hexa or whatever that might be hovering and has no airflow across it. On an airplane, you can take them out of the can like this and just double-sided tape them to a wing or whatever. I usually run a tie wrap around it in addition to the double-sided tape. Carve out a cavity in the wing and put it inside the wing, sort of. So there's a lot of airflow across these inside an airplane. And so we frequently take them out of the can. But these two are just alike. This little one here is I think it's a 200 milliwatt. I don't know if it says on it or, whoops. Boy, need to go to manual focus on this. Anyway, you can see across the bottom, I'm going to have to solder on some wires. Left to right, your positive battery voltage and a ground. Next one's the video in from the camera, the ground from the camera, and 5 volts if you want to power the camera from this board. The audio is for this little black microphone right here. And then the transmit and receive on the end is to hook it to a USB port for programming and flashing the firmware. So this is basically the equivalent of these big transmitters in today's technology. These are 6 or 8 years old. Except they don't come with cables. You have to solder right to the solder pads, which doesn't bother me in the least. And then I've got a 600 milliwatt 5.8, and I think I've identified this as a really old 200 milliwatt 5.8 that's compared to the 600 milliwatt right next to it. There's just a lot of difference. Oops, my cables are catching on the end of the table. Trying to show the difference here. This was a 200 milliwatt. This one was a 3 times that, 600 milliwatts. But it doesn't need a heat sink on top of it. That's how the technology changed back 6 or 8 years ago. Now we have a little one that's also selectable between 25, 200, and 600 milliwatts that is just a little bigger than a postage stamp. So it'll go at 25 milliwatts if you want to. It'll also go at 200, equivalent of this one, or go at 600, the equivalent of this one. And it is nowhere near the size of either one of those. Doesn't need a heat sink. Isn't that amazing? The 5.8 video transmitters, they're actually a little bit better for FPV because 5.8 is a faster frequency than 1.2, so you can transfer more data. But it doesn't penetrate objects like buildings and trees and stuff as well as the 1.2. So there's uses for both of these bands. By the way, inside this, we have a lot of these that are 40 channel. Within the 5.8 video frequency, they're cut up into like 5860 megahertz, 5880, 5760. They're split up about 10 frequencies apart, and that way a lot of different people in the field at the same time can all have their video feed. Like I say, 40 channels. But you might not be able to use two adjacent frequencies in a race. They just bleed. So you just get 2 or 3 frequencies away. That's why there's 40 channels. And I'll hook the RF power meter up to these two and find out which of those channels produces the most power and try to work within that. Just love the difference in the 1.2 and the 5.8 antenna being so much physically different. Anyway, all that is meant to get as long a range as I can video transmitter and camera going on the rover, and to use it and play with it here in the yard to fine-tune my video for the platforms I'll be flying. So things have slowed down, but they haven't stopped completely. Just a little tidbit I thought was funny. This is the 1.2 video transmitter. Remember, I told you it works at 1258 megahertz or 1280. But the antenna, if you look real close, is tuned for 1240. So they sent and shipped a antenna that's tuned for 1240 megahertz onto a video transmitter that actually transmits 1258 or 1280. Okay, the truth is that's not going to be a lot of a problem. There's always a little give and take in this stuff. I guarantee you the transmitter is not transmitting exactly on 1258 or 1280. It might be transmitting on 1245 and 1270. It's close enough for government work. But I thought it was funny that they actually send out a transmitter with an antenna. I would have put whatever is halfway between 1258 and 1280, which is about 22 I would have put it 11, so I would have put it at 1269. I would have tuned the antenna at 1269 to be exactly between the 1258 and the 1280, but they didn't choose to do that. Who knows why? Probably some piece of equipment that uses 1240 megahertz that's no longer able to be sold. They have a bunch of these antennas laying around for it and decided to use on this device. Who knows? But I thought that was funny.